The stars disappeared one by one until only darkness remained above Earth. Where once the night sky had sparkled with distant suns, now massive shapes blocked out the light. Ships. Alien ships so large they cast shadows across entire continents. Captain. Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching through the reinforced windows as more vessels emerged from hyperspace. Each new arrival sent ripples through space itself, like stones dropped into a still pond. The alien fleet stretched beyond the horizon, an endless wall of crystalline metal and pulsing energy. "How many?" she asked her communications officer. "Lieutenant." Chen's hands trembled as he checked his instruments. "We've counted over 3,000 ships, Captain, and they're still coming." Sarah had been in the military for 20 years. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and defended colonies from raiders. But this was different. This was something Earth had never faced before. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, like living crystals that caught and twisted light into impossible patterns. Some were the size of cities, their hulls covered in structures that looked grown rather than built. The largest ship hung directly above Earth's North Pole. It was a mountain of translucent blue crystal, its surface alive with flowing energy, patterns. Smaller vessels orbited around it like moons around a planet. Even from Luna Station, 300,000 kilometers away, Sarah could feel its presence pressing against her mind. "Incoming transmission," Chen announced. "All frequencies. They're broadcasting to every device on Earth and in the system." The main screen flickered and displayed an alien face. The creature was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were large and completely black, like pools of liquid night. When it spoke, its voice was cold and musical, like wind chimes made of ice. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire, speaking for the Hegemony Coalition. You will listen carefully, for your survival depends on understanding what comes next." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. She had heard stories about the Hegemony Coalition from deep space traders and exploration crews. 12 alien civilizations that ruled most of the known galaxy. They were said to be ancient, powerful, and completely without mercy for those who opposed them. "Your species has reached the point where you can no longer be ignored," Admiral Kethvar continued. "You have spread to other worlds. You have developed weapons that could threaten interstellar peace. The time has come for Earth to join the greater galactic community." The alien's image was replaced by scenes of other worlds, beautiful planets with strange architectures and impossible cities. But as Sarah watched, she realized these weren't promotional videos. They were conquest records. She saw orbital bombardments that turned continents to glass. She saw cities burning and populations fleeing in terror. 847 worlds have chosen to accept our protection, Kethvar's voice explained, over the images of destruction. They recognized the wisdom of joining something greater than themselves. They understood that resistance leads only to suffering. The screen returned to the alien admiral's face. "We offer Earth the same choice we have offered all species that reach this level of development. Surrender unconditionally. Accept designation as a protectorate under coalition authority. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your governments will serve at our pleasure. Your people will be relocated as needed to serve the greater good of the galaxy." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Around her, the bridge crew stood in stunned silence. She could see the same anger and fear in their faces that she felt burning in her chest. "You have 72 hours to comply," Kethvar announced. "If your leaders have not formally surrendered by that time, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. We have cracked the hearts of gas giants and boiled away the atmospheres of worlds that defied us. Earth's defenses are primitive compared to those we have already overcome." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in darkness except for the glow of instruments and the terrible light of the alien fleet outside. Chen broke the silence. "Captain, we're receiving calls from Earth Command. Every military installation in the system is requesting orders." Sarah nodded slowly. "Put me through to Admiral Reynolds on Earth." The screen lit up with the tired face of Admiral James Reynolds, the head of Earth's United Defense Council. Behind him, Sarah could see the chaos of the command center. Officers ran between stations while screens displayed tactical data and damage assessments. "Sarah," Reynolds said, "I assume you saw the broadcast." "Yes, sir." "What are our orders?" Reynolds rubbed his temples. "We're calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. Every available ship is being recalled to Earth orbit. We need to assess our options." "Sir, with respect, what options do we have?" Sarah gestured toward the alien fleet visible through the station's windows. "They have over 3,000 ships. We have maybe 50 vessels that could qualify as warships, and most of those are patrol boats." "I know the odds, Captain. But we're not going to just roll over and surrender without exploring every possibility." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sarah took Luna Station's small fleet of defense ships and joined the pitiful Armada, gathering around Earth. 3 orbital defense platforms, 42 military vessels of various sizes, a handful of armed civilian ships whose captains had volunteered to fight. Against them hung the coalition fleet, a wall of crystal and energy that stretched beyond the moon's orbit. Their smallest ships were larger than Earth's biggest battleships. Their weapons could reach across light minutes and strike with the force of nuclear weapons. Their shields had turned aside everything humanity had thrown at them during brief demonstration attacks. Sarah attended the emergency council meeting via hologram from her ship's bridge. The faces around the virtual table showed the same mix of determination and despair she felt. President Chen of the Pacific Federation looked like she hadn't slept in days. Chancellor Okafor of the African Union kept checking reports from his military advisors. Premier Volkov of the Eurasian Republic said nothing, just stared at the tactical displays with cold calculation. "Options," Admiral Reynolds said simply. "We fight," declared General Morrison of the North American Alliance. "Maybe we can't win, but we don't surrender to aliens. Humanity doesn't kneel." "And accomplish what?" asked Dr. Yamamoto, Earth's chief scientist. "They'll glass the planet. Billions will die." "For what? Pride?" "For freedom," Morrison shot back. "For the right to determine our own fate." President Chen leaned forward. "What about negotiation? Maybe we can reach some kind of compromise. Limited autonomy, gradual integration instead of immediate surrender." Chancellor Okafor shook his head. "You heard their ultimatum. Unconditional. Surrender or destruction. Those are our choices." The argument continued for hours. Some wanted to fight regardless of the cost. Others pushed for immediate surrender to save as many lives as possible. A few suggested trying to evacuate key personnel to hidden colonies in distant systems. Sarah listened to it all and felt a growing despair. Earth's leaders were brave, but they were also trapped. Humanity had always been good at fighting other humans. But this was different. This was like ants trying to fight a forest fire. "There is one other option," Premier Volkov said quietly. The room fell silent. Volkov rarely spoke during these meetings, but when he did, people listened. The man had been a spy master before becoming a political leader, and he knew secrets that others could only guess at. "Explain," Admiral Reynolds ordered. Volkov glanced around the table, his pale eyes calculating. "Project Lazarus, Protocol 77 Alpha." Reynolds went white. "That's classified beyond clearance levels. How do you know about that?" "Because my predecessor was one of the 3 who authorized it 2 centuries ago, before my time, but the records still exist in the deepest archives." "What is Protocol 77 Alpha?" President Chen demanded. Reynolds looked like he was aging years by the minute. "It's a contingency plan from the early colonial period. A failsafe in case Earth ever faced extinction-level threats. What kind of failsafe? Dr. Yamamoto asked. Volkov answered before Reynolds could speak. A signal beacon, hidden in the deepest ocean trench, powered by geothermal energy and built to last forever. One transmission, on a frequency that penetrates hyperspace barriers. A call for help, Sarah realized. But who would we be calling? Earth's colonies are all small and defenseless. They can't help us against something like this. Not the colonies, Volkov said softly. Something else. Someone else. Reynolds closed his eyes. The Black Armada. The name sent a chill through the room. Sarah had heard whispers about the Black Armada in military circles. Stories told in bars by deep space crews and exploration teams. Ships that appeared from nowhere to destroy pirate fleets. Rescues that happened when no rescue should have been possible. Vessels so advanced they seemed to bend the laws of physics. Most people dismissed such stories as spacer legends or alcohol-induced fantasies. But the way Admiral Reynolds said the name suggested something different. They're real? Chancellor Okafor asked. Real enough that someone thought it was worth building a beacon to call them, Volkov replied. Real enough that 3 of Earth's most paranoid leaders agreed to spend billions on a signal device that might never be used. Outside, the alien fleet waited in perfect formation. 48 hours remained on their ultimatum. Earth's defenders hung in space like minnows before a school of sharks, brave but helpless. Admiral Reynolds looked around the table one more time. All in favor of activating Protocol 77 Alpha? Every hand rose. Sarah watched from her ship as something changed in the deep Pacific Ocean. Sensors detected a massive energy surge from the Mariana Trench, followed by a transmission that made every piece of electronic equipment on Earth briefly flicker. The signal was strange. Not quite radio waves or laser communications. It seemed to twist through space in ways that hurt to think about. The Coalition fleet noticed it too. Their formation shifted slightly, sensors turning toward Earth like the heads of curious predators. But Admiral Kethvar's response came quickly over the communication channels. Primitive desperation, his cold voice announced. We have seen this before. You call to empty space, hoping for salvation that will never come. 36 hours remain. Use them to prepare your surrender, for no help will arrive. But something had changed. Sarah could feel it in the air, a tension that made her skin crawl and her teeth ache. The stars themselves seemed different, as if they were holding their breath. Deep in space, beyond the orbit of Pluto, space itself began to ripple. The countdown continued like a heartbeat marking humanity's final hours. 48 hours became 40, then 36. Earth's military forces remained in formation around the planet, but everyone knew they were just for show. The real hope now lay in whatever Protocol 77 Alpha had accomplished. Captain Sarah Martinez paced the bridge of her destroyer, the UES Defiance. Through the viewports, she could see the alien fleet hanging in space like a collection of deadly jewels. They hadn't moved since delivering their ultimatum, but their presence pressed against human minds like a weight that grew heavier with each passing hour. Any response to the signal? She asked her communications officer for the 100th time. Lieutenant Chen shook his head. Nothing, Captain. Deep space sensors show some unusual readings at the edge of the system, but it could be anything. Solar. Wind, cosmic radiation, equipment malfunctions. Sarah nodded but felt her stomach tighten. The signal had been sent almost a day ago. If help was coming, surely it would have arrived by now. Maybe Admiral Kethvar was right. Maybe humanity was calling out to empty space, hoping for a miracle that would never come. On Earth below, the mood was strange. Some cities had erupted, in panic when the ultimatum was first broadcast. Riots, looting, people trying to flee to anywhere that might be safer. But as the hours passed, a weird calm had settled over much of the planet. Maybe it was shock, Or maybe people had simply accepted their fate. The communication channels buzzed with traffic from Earth's leaders. Some still argued for a last-minute surrender to save lives. Others insisted on fighting to the end, no matter how hopeless it seemed. A few had gone silent, either preparing for the worst or trying to find ways to survive what was coming. Sarah pulled up the tactical display on her command screen. Earth's defenses looked pathetic compared to the coalition forces. The 3 orbital platforms had enough firepower to crack a small moon, but the aliens' shields could probably absorb everything humanity had without even noticing. The 42 ships in Earth's defense fleet were built for fighting pirates, and raiders not for facing the combined might of 12 galactic civilizations, but they would fight anyway. That was what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, they got angry instead of giving up. It was probably why the species had survived long enough to reach the stars in the first place. "Captain," her tactical officer called out, "the aliens are doing something." Sarah turned to the main display. The coalition fleet was shifting formation, not moving toward Earth but spreading out in a different pattern. The massive command ship remained in position above the planet's north pole, but smaller vessels were taking up new positions throughout the solar system. "They're setting up for bombardment," Chen observed. "If we don't surrender in the next day, they want to be ready to hit every major city simultaneously." The thought made Sarah's blood run cold. The coalition's weapons could sterilize continents in minutes. Cities that had stood for thousands of years would become radioactive craters. Billions of people would die before they even knew what was happening. Her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Reynolds. His face appeared on her screen looking even more exhausted than before. "Sarah, I need you to take a team down to coordinates I'm sending you. Maximum security clearance required." She looked at the coordinates. They were in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, over the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans, where the signal had originated. "Sir, what's down there?" "Something that might give us answers about what we've gotten ourselves into. Take your best people in a deep-sea, capable shuttle. I'm sending you the access codes now." The descent to the ocean floor took 3 hours. Sarah brought her 2 most trusted officers and her chief engineer, all sworn to secrecy about whatever they might find. The deep-sea shuttle was built for exploring underwater mining sites, its hull designed to withstand crushing pressure. As they descended through the ocean layers, Sarah watched the depth readings climb higher and higher. 10 kilometers down, 15, 20. The water outside was completely black, lit only by the shuttle's external lights. Strange creatures drifted past occasionally, things that had never seen sunlight and probably never would. "Approaching the coordinates," announced Chief Engineer Torres. "I'm seeing some kind of structure on the bottom." The shuttle's lights revealed something that shouldn't have existed. A facility built into the ocean floor itself, its surfaces covered in materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The whole structure was maybe 50 meters across, but it was clearly artificial. More importantly, it was active. Energy readings showed massive power flowing through systems that had been dormant for centuries. "How long has this been here?" Lieutenant Morrison asked. Sarah checked the classified files Admiral Reynolds had transmitted. According to these records, it was built in 2157, part of a secret project authorized by the World Council during the early colonial expansion period. They docked with an airlock that shouldn't have been able to function after 200 years underwater, but somehow still worked perfectly. The facility's interior was even stranger than its exterior. Corridors stretched into darkness, lined with technology that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Emergency lighting activated as they moved deeper into the structure. Everything was automated, as if the place had been waiting for someone to return. They found control rooms, filled with displays showing star charts and navigation data. Some of the charts showed regions of space that human explorers had never reached. "Captain, you need to see this," Torres called from another room. Sarah found her engineer standing before a massive display screen that showed the entire solar system. The alien fleet was visible as red dots surrounding Earth. But there were other markers, too, green contacts at the very edge of the system, contacts that were moving. The facility's sensors are more advanced than anything we have on our ships, Torres explained. They can detect things at the edge of the heliosphere that our equipment can't even see. Sarah studied the display. Are those ships? I think so. But they're not transmitting any identification signals. And Captain, look at this. Torres manipulated the controls and the display zoomed in on one of the green contacts. What Sarah saw made no sense. The object was definitely a spacecraft, but its design was unlike anything human or alien. It was sleek and predatory, its hull so dark it seemed to swallow light. Strange energy patterns flowed across its surface like living things. How big is that? She asked. Based on the sensor returns, about 2 kilometers long. But Captain, there's something else. The computer has files on these ships, old files from when this place was built. Torres opened another display screen. Text scrolled past in multiple languages, some of which Sarah recognized and others that looked completely alien. But the images were clear enough. The same dark ships, recorded from various angles and distances, combat footage showing them in action against unknown enemies. The Black Armada, Sarah whispered. According to these records, contact was established in 2156, Torres read from the files. A deep space exploration mission found something out there, ships, technology, maybe even people, though the files aren't clear about that. What matters is that some kind of agreement was reached. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean depths surrounding them. What kind of agreement? A compact, the files call it. Earth would be left alone to develop naturally. No interference, no contact, no help. But if the planet ever faced extinction, if humanity was threatened with complete destruction, then one signal could be sent, one call for help. The pieces were starting to come together. The beacon, the mysterious ships at the edge of the system, the absolute secrecy surrounding the project. Someone or something had been watching Earth for over 2 centuries, waiting for a signal that might never come. But who are they? Morrison asked. The files don't say. Torres scrolled through more documents. There are references to the children who went into the dark and those who found what was left behind, but most of the detailed records are encrypted beyond anything we can break. A new alarm sounded throughout the facility. The displays flickered and changed, showing an incoming transmission. But this wasn't coming from Earth or from the alien fleet. This was something else entirely. The main screen activated, showing a view of space that must have been transmitted from the edge of the solar system. More dark ships were appearing, dozens of them, then hundreds. They moved with fluid grace that made human spacecraft look clumsy by comparison. Their hulls reflected no light at all, as if they were made from pieces of space itself. They're coming, Sarah said softly. The transmission ended, but the displays continued to track the approaching ships. They were moving faster than anything should be able to travel without using hyperspace jumps, but they weren't jumping. They were simply moving through normal space at speeds that violated everything scientists thought they knew about physics. Sarah's communicator chimed with an urgent message from Admiral Reynolds. All teams, return to your ships immediately. Something is happening at the edge of the system. We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies and energy readings that don't match anything in our databases. The trip back to the surface felt like it took forever. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process what they had discovered. Earth had made contact with something powerful enough to build facilities that operated perfectly after 2 centuries of neglect, something that commanded ships advanced enough to cross interstellar distances in ways that human science couldn't explain. But were they friends or enemies? The facility's records suggested some kind of protective agreement, but the files were maddeningly vague about details. All humanity knew for certain was that their desperate signal had been answered. Back aboard the Defiance, Sarah immediately pulled up the long-range sensor displays. The contacts at the edge of the system were becoming clearer as they approached. Ships, definitely ships, but designed in ways that hurt to look at. Their hulls seemed to bend light around them, creating visual distortions that made her eyes water. "Captain," Chen called out, "I'm picking up transmissions from the Coalition fleet. They've detected the newcomers." The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Kethvar's face. The alien looked confused for the first time since arriving at Earth. His large black eyes were wider than usual, and there was something that might have been concern in his musical voice. "Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves immediately. You are entering a restricted system under Coalition authority. State your intentions or be destroyed." The response came not in words, but in action. One of the dark ships, smaller than the others but still massive by human standards, accelerated toward the Coalition fleet. As it moved, space around it seemed to ripple and bend. The alien sensors focused on it, trying to get clear readings. What happened next defied everything Sarah thought she knew about space combat. The Coalition ships opened fire first, their weapons reaching across millions of kilometers to strike at the approaching vessel. Beams of energy that could melt asteroids, projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed, exotic weapons. That twisted space itself. All of it simply stopped existing when it got close to the dark ship. Not deflected or absorbed, but actually ceasing to be, as if reality itself rejected their presence. The dark ship continued its approach without slowing, without even seeming to notice the barrage directed at it. "What are we looking at?" Morrison whispered. Sarah had no answer. The laws of physics were apparently more like suggestions to whoever controlled those ships. And they were still coming, more of them appearing every minute at the edge of the system. 24 hours remained on the Coalition's ultimatum. But Sarah suspected that the countdown no longer mattered. Something else was coming to Earth. Something that made the alien invaders look primitive by comparison. The question was whether humanity had called for salvation or simply invited a different kind of doom. Space was breaking. Captain Sarah Martinez watched the sensor displays aboard the UES Defiance and tried to understand what she was seeing. The readings made no sense. Gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist, energy signatures that violated known physics, and at the edge of the solar system, reality itself seemed to be bending around the approaching dark ships. "Captain, the Coalition fleet is repositioning," reported Lieutenant Chen. "They're moving away from Earth and toward the edge of the system." Sarah nodded grimly. Admiral Kethvar wasn't stupid. Whatever was coming from deep space had spooked him enough to shift his attention away from humanity's surrender deadline. The alien commander was treating these newcomers as a potential threat, which was either very good news for Earth or very bad news for everyone. The countdown showed 18 hours remaining until the Coalition's ultimatum expired. But the numbers seemed meaningless now. Something else was coming. Something that made the crystal ships of 12 galactic civilizations look primitive by comparison. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Reynolds," Chen announced. The main screen flickered and showed Earth's military commander. Behind him, the command center was in chaos. Officers ran between stations while screens displayed data streams that changed faster than human eyes could follow. "Sarah, we need every ship we can get formed up in defensive positions around Earth. Whatever's coming, we need to be ready." "Sir, defensive positions against what?" "We still don't know if these newcomers are friendly or hostile." Reynolds rubbed his tired eyes. "At this point, I'm not sure it matters. We're caught between two forces that could probably destroy us without breaking stride. All we can do is hope that one of them is less interested in wiping us out than the other." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah to contemplate their impossible situation. Humanity was like a mouse caught between two cats, hoping that one of them might be too distracted by the other to notice the small creature cowering between them. She pulled up the tactical display and studied the developing situation. The Coalition fleet had spread out in a defensive formation that covered half the solar system. Their massive crystal ships pulsed with energy as weapon systems charged and shields reached maximum power. They were preparing for a fight. At the edge of the main system, the dark ships continued to appear. Sarah's tactical computer tried to count them, but kept losing track as more vessels seemed to materialize from nothing. Dozens became hundreds, then thousands. Each ship was unique, as if they had been grown rather than built, but all shared the same light-absorbing hulls and predatory designs. "Captain," called out her science officer, "I'm detecting something strange about those ships. They're not just dark. They're actually creating areas of decreased photon density around themselves." Sarah frowned. "Explain that in simple terms." "They're not just absorbing light, they're making light not exist in their vicinity. It's like they're carrying pieces of empty space with them." The thought made Sarah's skin crawl. Ships that could edit reality around themselves were bad enough. Ships that traveled with their own personal voids were something else entirely. A new contact appeared on the sensors, much closer than the others. One of the dark ships had somehow moved from the edge of the system to a position near Jupiter, in the time it took Sarah to blink. No hyperspace signature, no energy trail, no indication of how it had covered billions of kilometers instantaneously. "How did it do that?" Morrison asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "and I'm not sure I want to know." The Coalition fleet noticed the newcomer immediately. Admiral Kethvar's flagship, the massive crystal dreadnought that had been hovering above Earth's North Pole, began moving toward Jupiter at maximum acceleration. Smaller ships followed, their formations precise and deadly. Sarah's communications board lit up with intercepted transmissions from the alien fleet. Most were in languages her computer couldn't translate, but the tone was clear. Fear and anger mixed with battle commands and tactical assessments. "They're scared," Chen observed. "I've never heard alien communications like this before. They sound almost panicked." The first dark ship responded to the approaching Coalition forces in a way that defied understanding. It didn't fire weapons or raise shields. Instead, it simply moved, not through space, but around it, as if the laws of physics were suggestions it could choose to ignore. The Coalition ships opened fire when they reached weapons range. Beams of energy that could crack moons reached across the void. Projectiles, moving at relativistic speeds, streaked toward their target. Exotic weapons that Sarah didn't recognize twisted space itself into weapon forms. All of it stopped existing when it got within a few thousand kilometers of the dark ship. Not deflected or absorbed, but actually ceasing to be, as if reality rejected their presence. The dark ship continued its impossible movement patterns, flowing through space like water through a maze. "My God," whispered Torres from the engineering station. "They're not using technology. They're using something else entirely." The dark ship's response was swift and terrible. It didn't fire visible weapons or launch projectiles. Instead, something reached out from it toward the Coalition fleet. Space itself seemed to ripple, carrying with it a wave of wrongness that made Sarah's teeth ache just from watching it on sensors. The wave touched the lead Coalition cruiser, a kilometer-long vessel that had probably survived hundreds of battles. Across the galaxy, the ship simply stopped being, not destroyed, not vaporized, but edited out of existence as if it had never been there at all. One moment it was accelerating toward the dark ship, the next moment there was empty space where it had been. "Did you see any explosion?" Sarah asked her tactical officer. "No, Captain. No debris. No energy signature, no distress signal. The ship just wasn't there anymore." The Coalition fleet's response was immediate and desperate. Every ship in the formation opened fire simultaneously, pouring enough energy into the space around the dark ship to sterilize a planet. The alien commanders were no longer concerned with precision or tactics. They were trying to overwhelm whatever defenses the newcomer possessed through sheer firepower. It didn't work. The barrage of weapons fire simply vanished as it approached. The dark ship, disappearing into nothingness as if it had never existed. The ship itself remained untouched, still moving through space in patterns that hurt to watch. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Chen announced. "Not from the Coalition or from Earth Command. It's coming from the dark ship." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. "Put it through." The main screen flickered and went black. Not the black of an empty display, but a deeper darkness that seemed to pull light into itself. When a voice spoke, it came from everywhere at once, as if the ship itself was talking. "Guardians of the Old Compact, we acknowledge your signal. The terms remain. As agreed, Earth stands under our protection." The voice was human but wrong somehow. It spoke in perfect English, but with undertones that suggested vast age and experiences beyond human understanding. When it said the word protection, Sarah felt something cold crawl up her spine. "This system is now under our authority," the voice continued. "Invaders will withdraw beyond the heliosphere or face consequences. You have been warned." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah and her crew in stunned silence. The voice had been human, she was certain of it, but humans didn't. "Build ships that could edit reality or make weapons cease to exist." "Admiral Reynolds is hailing us," Chen reported. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of relief and terror. "Sarah, are you seeing this? Did you hear that transmission?" "Yes, sir." The voice was human. "But those ships—" "I know. We're getting reports from the deep. Sea facility team. The records down there are becoming more accessible. Whatever encryption was protecting them is apparently lifting now that contact has been established." "What do the records say?" "Things that don't make sense. References to a colony ship that launched in 2153 and was presumed lost. Mission designation, Far Harbor. But Sarah, that ship was supposed to go to Alpha Centauri. These things are coming from somewhere much farther away." The tactical display updated, showing the Coalition fleet pulling back from the dark ship near Jupiter. But their retreat was too slow. More dark ships were appearing throughout the system, materializing from nothing in positions that surrounded the alien fleet. "They're trapped," Morrison observed. "Good," Torres muttered. "Maybe now they'll know how we felt when they showed up." Admiral Kethvar's voice crackled over the communication channels, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, we are the Hegemony Coalition. We have authority over this region of space by right of conquest and technological superiority. Withdraw immediately or face the combined might of 12 civilizations." The response came not from one dark ship, but from all of them simultaneously. When they spoke together, their voices created harmonics that made the hull of Sarah's ship vibrate like a struck bell. "We know what you are, children of the crystal worlds. We know your history and your crimes. We have watched you spread across this galaxy like a disease, consuming everything you touch. Your authority ends here." "You cannot threaten us," Kethvar replied. "We have conquered worlds that possess technology beyond your understanding. We have brought order to chaos across 800 star systems." "Have you?" The voice carried amusement now, but it was the kind of amusement that preceded terrible things. "Tell us, Crystal Prince, what have you conquered that we have not already surpassed? What technology do you possess that we did not help inspire? What worlds have you claimed that we have not already walked?" The implications of those words hit Sarah like a physical blow. These weren't just advanced humans from a lost colony ship. These were something that predated the Coalition's expansion across the galaxy, something that had been watching and waiting while 12 civilizations built an empire. "Impossible," Kethvar transmitted. "Our records go back 50,000 years. Our civilization ruled the galaxy when your species was still trapped on one world." "Your records are incomplete, Crystal Prince, but we will help you remember." What happened next would be talked about for centuries, assuming anyone survived to do the talking. Space around the Coalition fleet began to change. Not just darkness, but wrongness spreading like an infection. Ships that had sailed between stars for millennia suddenly found themselves lost in corridors of twisted space-time. The alien sensors went haywire as reality became unreliable around them. Some ships found themselves existing in multiple locations simultaneously. Others discovered that their weapons were firing backwards through time. A few simply slipped sideways out of normal space entirely. "We are the children who went into the dark between galaxies," the voice explained calmly, while impossible things happened around the Coalition fleet. "We are the ones who found what the previous tenants left behind. We learned from ruins so old that your civilization's birth was still millions of years in the future when they fell." Sarah watched in fascination and horror as the mighty Coalition fleet, the combined military force of 12 advanced civilizations, was reduced to helpless confusion by beings that claimed to be human, or had once been human. The distinction was becoming harder to make. "What do you want?" Kethvar's voice had lost its musical quality, becoming harsh with fear and desperation. "What we have always wanted, to be left alone, to protect what matters, to us, to ensure that the compact is honored." "What compact?" "The one we made with Earth long ago. The one that promised we would not interfere in humanity's development, and the one that promised we would destroy anything that threatened our birthworld's existence." The dark ships began moving again, flowing through space toward the Coalition fleet like living shadows. As they approached, more impossible things began happening. Ships started aging rapidly, their hulls corroding as if they had been in space for millions of years. Others found their crews simply disappearing, leaving empty vessels drifting in the void. "You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal," the voice announced. "After that, we will demonstrate why your ancestors learned to fear the spaces between stars." Admiral Kethvar made the only choice available to someone facing forces beyond comprehension. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. Do not engage the unknown vessels. Repeat, do not engage." Sarah watched as the mighty Coalition fleet, the terror of hundreds of worlds, fled from ships that defied everything she thought she knew about the universe. But as they retreated, one question burned in her mind. If these beings were once human, what had they become during their time in the dark between galaxies? And was Earth safer with their protection? Or had humanity simply traded one threat for something far worse? The Coalition fleet hung in space like wounded predators, their crystal hulls still pulsing with energy, but their formations broken and confused. Admiral Kethvar's flagship, the massive dreadnought that had threatened to reduce Earth to ash, now drifted uncertainly at the edge of the solar system. Around it, hundreds of alien warships tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Captain Sarah Martinez studied the tactical displays aboard the UES Defiance, watching as her sensors tracked both fleets. The dark ships of the mysterious Black Armada had spread throughout the system, but they weren't attacking. They were waiting, like sharks circling wounded prey. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the Coalition fleet," reported Lieutenant Chen. "They're charging weapons and preparing for another engagement." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "After what they just saw, are they insane?" "Pride," said Chief Engineer Torres grimly. "They've conquered hundreds of worlds. They can't accept that something exists that can make their technology look like stone knives and bearskins." The communication channels crackled with transmissions from Admiral Reynolds on Earth. "All ships maintain defensive positions but do not fire unless fired upon. We're trying to figure out what the hell is happening up there." Sarah couldn't blame him for being confused. In the space of a few hours, Earth had gone from facing certain destruction to watching two forces that could casually destroy planets, square off in their backyard. Humanity was still caught in the middle, but now they had a front-row seat to what might be the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Admiral Kethvar's voice cut across all communication frequencies, carrying the musical tones of his species, but now edged with desperate anger. Unknown vessels, you have demonstrated advanced capabilities. We acknowledge this, but you make a grave error if you believe we will simply retreat without understanding what you are. The response came from the nearest dark ship, its voice that strange mixture of human and something else entirely. We are exactly what we appear to be, Crystal Prince. We are the children of Earth who went looking for wonders in the dark between galaxies. We found them. Impossible. Our records show that human spaceflight is barely 3 centuries old. You could not have traveled to other galaxies in that time. Your records are limited by your understanding of space and time. We learned from teachers who built roads between galaxies when your civilization was still learning to make fire. Sarah's science officer pulled up a new display showing energy readings from across the system. Captain, the dark ships aren't just advanced. They're operating on principles that don't match any known physics. It's like they're using science from a completely different universe. The standoff continued for several more minutes, with both fleets maintaining their positions. Then Admiral Kethvar made a decision that would echo through galactic history. We have faced impossible odds before and prevailed. Unknown vessels, you will identify yourselves properly and explain your presence in this system, or we will consider you hostile and respond accordingly. The response was immediate and chilling. So be it. One of the dark ships began moving toward the Coalition fleet. Not the largest vessel, barely frigate-sized compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts, but as it approached, space around it began to change in ways that made Sarah's eyes water to look at. All Coalition vessels, open fire, Kethvar commanded. Destroy that ship. What followed was the most intense display of firepower Sarah had ever witnessed. The combined fleet of 12 galactic civilizations unleashed everything they had at a single target. Energy beams that could melt continents reached across space. Projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed streaked toward the dark ship. Exotic weapons that twisted space-time itself created reality distortions around the target. For a moment, the dark ship disappeared completely behind a wall of destructive energy that would have vaporized a small moon. The Coalition. Gunners poured on more fire, layer after layer of devastating weapons. Surely nothing could survive such an assault. Then the energy cleared, and the dark ship was still there, unchanged, untouched, moving steadily toward the Coalition fleet as if nothing had happened. Impossible, whispered Chen. Nothing could survive that much firepower. It's not surviving, Torres corrected, staring at her instrument readings. The attacks aren't hitting it. They're being edited out of reality before they reach the target. The dark ship's response was swift and terrible. It didn't fire visible weapons or launch missiles. Instead, something reached out from it toward Admiral Kethvar's flagship. Sarah's sensors couldn't detect what was being transmitted, but they registered the effects clearly enough. The massive Coalition dreadnought, 5 kilometers of crystalline perfection that had served as the terror of hundreds of worlds, began to change. Its hull started becoming translucent, then transparent, then simply absent. The ship wasn't being destroyed. It was being carefully taken apart at the molecular level, edited out of existence one atom at a time. Admiral Kethvar's final transmission was brief and filled with terror. This is impossible. Our shield should protect us from any form of matter manipulation. How are you doing this? The voice that answered him was no longer entirely human, carrying harmonics that spoke of vast spaces between stars and knowledge, older than civilization itself. We learned from ruins, Crystal Prince, ruins left by beings who transcended the need for crude matter manipulation. They taught us that reality is more flexible than most species realize. The Coalition flagship completed its transition from existence to non-existence. Where once had hung a mountain of living crystal, now there was only empty space. No debris, no energy signature, no trace that the ship had ever been there at all. The rest of the coalition fleet responded with panic. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for centuries broke ranks and began moving in random directions. Some tried to jump to hyperspace and found their drives non-functional. Others simply stopped moving entirely, their crews too shocked to function. "Unknown vessels," came a new transmission from the coalition fleet. This wasn't Admiral Kethvar's musical voice. This was someone else, speaking in the harsh tones of a different alien species. We wish to negotiate." "There is nothing to negotiate," replied the dark ship. "We have given you our terms. Withdraw beyond the heliosphere, and you will be allowed to leave this system intact. Remain, and you will join your admiral in whatever place erased things go." Sarah found herself holding her breath as she watched the alien fleet's response. These were beings who had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. They had faced down civilizations with technology that dwarfed anything humanity possessed. But now they were faced with something that treated the laws of physics as optional suggestions. We require time to consult with our home governments," the alien spokesperson finally transmitted. "This situation was not anticipated in our operational parameters." "You have 1 hour," the dark ship replied. "Use it wisely." The coalition fleet began moving toward the edge of the system, but slowly, as if their commander still couldn't quite believe what was happening. Sarah didn't blame them. She was having trouble believing it herself. "Captain, incoming transmission from the deep-sea facility," Chen announced. "They're saying that more files have become accessible, including some kind of historical record." Sarah accepted the data transfer and pulled up the new files on her personal screen. What she read made her blood run cold. The record spoke of the colony ship Far Harbor, launched in 2153 with a crew of 10,000 volunteers. Their mission had been simple: establish humanity's first settlement beyond the solar system. But something had gone wrong. The ship had encountered what the files called artifacts of the predecessors in the space between galaxies. Ancient ruins, left by a civilization so advanced that they had transcended physical existence entirely. The colonists had tried to study these artifacts and had been changed. The files were fragmentary after that point, but they spoke of the colonists becoming something new, not quite human anymore, but not entirely alien either. They had learned to manipulate reality itself, to treat space and time as tools rather than limitations. And they had made a compact with their home world. They would not interfere with humanity's natural development. They would allow Earth to grow and explore on its own terms. But if their birth world was ever threatened with extinction, they would return. And they would remind the galaxy why empty space was something to be feared. "My God," Sarah whispered. "They're not aliens pretending to be human. They're humans who became something else entirely." The communication board lit up with an incoming transmission from one of the dark ships. Not the voice that had been speaking to the coalition, but something different. When it spoke, Sarah recognized the accent immediately. It was speaking English, with the same regional pronunciation her own grandmother had used. "Captain Martinez of the UES Defiance, we know you've been reading the files from the deep facility. Do you have questions?" Sarah's hands trembled as she activated the response channel. Were you human?" "We were. We are. We became something more. The boundaries are not as clear as you might think." "What happened to you out there?" "We found teachers, Captain. Beings who had learned to write reality like you might write a poem. They showed us that the universe is far more malleable than most species realize. Matter, energy, time, space. These are just different words for the same fundamental thing." Sarah thought about the coalition flagship that had simply stopped existing. "Is that how you erased that ship?" "We didn't erase it, Captain. We convinced reality that it had never been built in the first place. The atoms that made up its hull are now part of the stellar wind around this system's star. The energy that powered it has been redistributed as cosmic background radiation. Nothing was destroyed, It was simply reorganized. The implications were staggering. These beings didn't fight with weapons. They fought by editing the universe itself, rewriting the fundamental laws that held reality together. No wonder the Coalition fleet was terrified. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Now? Now the Crystal Children learned that the galaxy is larger and stranger than they thought. And Earth continues to grow and develop, just as it always has. "We will not interfere with your species' natural evolution. But you'll protect us? We will honor the compact. Earth stands under our protection as it has for over 2 centuries. But Captain, understand this. Protection comes with a price. The galaxy now knows that humanity has allies who can unmake reality itself. Some will fear you for it. Others will try to use you to gain access to our capabilities." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you saying?" "We're saying that your species' quiet time is over. The galaxy will be watching Earth now, wondering what other secrets you might have hidden in the dark between stars. Be ready for that attention, Captain. Not all of it will be friendly." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of knowledge that felt too heavy to bear. Humanity had called for help and received it. But in doing so, they had also announced to the galaxy that they were connected to beings who could treat reality like clay to be molded. Outside the viewports, the Coalition fleet continued its slow retreat toward the edge of the system. They were leaving, just as the dark ships had demanded. But Sarah doubted this would be the end of it. Word would spread throughout their 12 civilizations about what had happened here, about humanity's mysterious protectors and their impossible capabilities. Earth was safe for now, but its quiet existence as an overlooked species in a backwater system was over. The galaxy would be watching, and not all of that attention would be benevolent. In the depths of space, the dark ships waited patiently for the aliens to complete their withdrawal. They had done what they came to do. They had honored the compact and protected their birth world. But they had also changed everything, for humanity and for the galaxy itself. The age of humanity hiding in the shadows was about to end, whether Earth was ready for it or not. The Coalition fleet was gone. Captain Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at space that once again showed only stars. The massive crystal ships that had blocked out the sky were now nothing more than a memory, and a collection of sensor records that most people would probably never believe. 48 hours had passed since the dark ships of the Black Armada had arrived at the edge of the solar system. 48 hours since Admiral Kethavar's flagship had been edited out of existence as casually as erasing a word from a document. The Coalition's retreat had been swift and complete once they realized what they were facing, but the dark ships remained. They hung in space throughout the solar system like sleeping predators, their hulls absorbing light and giving nothing back. They hadn't moved since the Coalition's departure, but their presence was a constant reminder that everything had changed. Earth was no longer alone in the galaxy, and humanity was no longer an insignificant species that could be ignored. "Captain, you're needed in the communications center," Lieutenant Chen's voice came over the intercom. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the deep-sea facility." Sarah made her way through Luna Station's corridors, passing windows that showed the impossible sight of dark ships scattered among the familiar patterns of human orbital installations. Her crew members nodded respectfully as she passed, but she could see the questions in their eyes. Everyone wanted to know what came next. The communications center was buzzing with activity when she arrived. Multiple screens showed data streams, from the deep-sea facility, from Earth's major governments, and from the few brave observation posts that had been monitoring the dark ships. Admiral Reynolds appeared on the main display, looking older than his years, but more relieved than Sarah had seen him since the crisis began. "Sarah, we've had a breakthrough with the facility's records. The encryption that was protecting the most sensitive files has been completely removed. We're finally getting a clear picture of what happened to the Far Harbor colony. Sarah settled into a chair and pulled up the data on her personal screen. What she read made her stomach tighten with a mixture of awe and horror. The colony ship. Far Harbor had launched from Earth orbit on March 15, 2153, carrying 10,000 volunteers toward what they thought would be humanity's first interstellar settlement. The mission parameters were simple. Establish a self-sustaining colony on a potentially habitable world in the Alpha Centauri system, conduct scientific research, and maintain contact with Earth. But 3 months into their journey, something had gone wrong. The ship's navigation systems had detected what appeared to be artificial structures in the space between galaxies. Massive constructs that shouldn't have existed, built from materials that didn't match anything in human databases. Captain Elena Vasquez had made the decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to Alpha Centauri, she had altered course to investigate the anomalous structures. It was a choice that would doom and transform her crew in ways that no one could have predicted. The records became fragmentary after that point, as if the very act of documenting what they found was somehow dangerous. But the pieces painted a terrifying picture. The structures were ruins, remnants of a civilization so advanced that they had transcended physical existence entirely. They had left behind what could only be described as tools for manipulating reality itself. The colonists had tried to study these artifacts and had been changed by the exposure. Not killed, not mutated in any conventional sense, but fundamentally altered at levels that human science couldn't understand. They had learned to perceive the universe differently, to see matter and energy and space and time as expressions of something more fundamental. But the changes came with a price. The colonists found that they could no longer return to Earth safely. Their altered nature would have affected the planet itself, potentially changing humanity in ways that couldn't be predicted or controlled. So, they had made a different choice. They would remain in the dark between galaxies, learning from the ruins of their unknown teachers. But they would not abandon their home world entirely. A compact was established, a promise that would bind them for centuries to come. Earth would be allowed to develop naturally, without interference from its transformed children. But if the planet ever faced extinction, if humanity was threatened with complete destruction, then one signal could call them home. "They've been out there for over 2 centuries," Admiral Reynolds said, his voice heavy with the weight of revelation. "Watching, learning, becoming something that we can barely recognize as human." Sarah scrolled through more records, finding fragments of communication logs from the early years after the compact was established. The messages were heartbreaking. Colonists trying to maintain contact with families they could never see again. Scientists documenting discoveries that they couldn't share with their home world. People slowly accepting that they had become something new, something that no longer quite fit the definition of human. "But they remember," Sarah said softly. "After all this time, they still remember what it means to be human." "Do they?" Reynolds asked. "What we saw out there, the way they dismantled that coalition ship, is that human?" Before Sarah could answer, a new voice spoke from the communication system. It was the same voice she had heard from the dark ships, but now it sounded different, more familiar somehow, more like something that might once have been entirely human. "May we speak with you, Captain Martinez? There are things you need to understand before we depart." Sarah activated the response channel. "I'm here, and I think I'd like some answers." "Then come to the coordinates we're transmitting. Bring whoever you trust, but understand that what we show you will change how you see the universe." The coordinates led to a location in space near Mars, where one of the smaller dark ships waited alone. Sarah took a shuttle from Luna Station, bringing along Admiral Reynolds and Chief Engineer Torres. As they approached the alien vessel, its hull seemed to ripple and change, revealing an opening that definitely hadn't been there moments before. The docking process was smooth and silent. The ship's interior was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The corridors were organic-looking but clearly artificial, with walls that seemed to shift and flow as they watched. Lighting came from everywhere and nowhere, as if the air itself was glowing. They were met by a figure that stopped Sarah's heart. It was human, recognizably and completely human, but wrong in subtle ways that made her skin crawl. The person was tall and elegant, with features that seemed perfect but not quite natural. When it spoke, its voice was the same one she had heard during the communications. "I am Marcus Chen," the figure said, "great-grandson of Dr. Liu Chen, who served as the Far Harbor's chief scientist. I was born between the galaxies, but my genetics are still entirely terrestrial. I am as human as you are, Captain. Just more than I used to be." "More how?" Torres asked, her engineer's mind clearly struggling with what she was seeing. Marcus smiled, and the expression was both entirely human and completely alien. "We learn to see reality as it truly is, rather than as our limited senses perceive it. Matter and energy are just different expressions of the same fundamental force. Space and time are dimensions that can be navigated like any others. Consciousness itself is a tool that can reshape the universe." He led them through corridors that defied geometry, rooms that were larger inside than outside, and viewing areas that showed impossible vistas of the space between galaxies. Along the way, they encountered other figures, all recognizably human, all wrong in ways that suggested they had stepped outside the normal boundaries of existence. "What happened to you out there?" Admiral Reynolds asked. "We found teachers," Marcus replied. Being so ancient that they had transcended physical existence millions of years before Earth's sun was born. They had built structures that spanned the space between galaxy clusters, devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. They entered a vast chamber whose walls showed images of the ruins the colonists had discovered. Structures that dwarfed solar systems, constructed from materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The sight of them made Sarah's eyes water and her mind rebel against what she was seeing. "They were gone," Marcus continued, "transcended beyond the need for physical form, but they had left behind their tools, their libraries, their accumulated knowledge of how the universe really works. We spent decades learning to understand even the simplest concepts." "And it changed you," Sarah said. "It evolved us. We learned to perceive dimensions beyond the standard 3. We developed the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level through conscious intention. We discovered that consciousness itself is a fundamental force, like gravity or electromagnetism." Torres stared at the images of impossible structures. "Is that how you destroyed the coalition ship? Conscious manipulation of quantum fields?" Marcus looked puzzled for a moment. "We didn't destroy it. Destruction implies waste, chaos, entropy. We simply convinced the universe that the ship's existence was unnecessary. Its atoms were redistributed into more useful configurations. The energy that had bound them together was that now some of them know you exist." Torres studied the star charts. "Can you teach us? Can humans learn what you learned?" Marcus shook his head sadly. "The process is irreversible and dangerous. Many of us did not survive the transition. Those who did can never truly return to what they were. We would not wish this path on our parent species unless there was no other choice." "But you'll protect us?" "We will honor the compact. If Earth faces extinction, we will respond. But, Captain, understand this. Our protection comes with isolation. As long as you are under our aegis, you will be set apart from the normal galactic community. Some will fear to approach you. Others will see you as too dangerous to allow to exist." The meeting continued for several hours, with Marcus and his companions explaining more about their transformation and the ancient civilization that had taught them. They spoke of technologies that could reshape solar systems, of knowledge that spanned millions of years, of responsibilities that came with the power to edit reality itself. But they also spoke of loneliness, of the price they had paid for their evolution. They could create wonders that defied imagination, but they could never truly return home. They were humanity's children, but they were no longer quite human enough to walk among their parent species without causing changes that couldn't be undone. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus led them to an observation deck that showed the solar system spread out below. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble that looked impossibly fragile against the vast darkness of space. "We will depart soon," Marcus said. "Our presence here is already causing ripple effects that will spread throughout the galaxy. But remember this, children of Earth. You are not alone. You never have been. And if the darkness ever grows too deep, if the threats become too great, you need only call. We will hear you across the light years, and we will come." The shuttle trip back to Luna Station was quiet. Sarah and her companions sat in contemplative silence, each trying to process what they had learned. Humanity had protectors, but they were protectors who had paid the ultimate price for their power. They had become something beyond human understanding, in order to retain the capacity to protect human values. As they docked with the station, Sarah looked out at the dark ships scattered throughout the solar system. Already some of them were beginning to fade, becoming translucent as they prepared to return to the spaces between galaxies. By morning, they would all be gone, leaving behind only records and memories of their impossible intervention. But they had left something else as well, a message that would echo throughout the galaxy as word of Earth's protection spread. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had allies who could unmake reality itself, beings who remembered what it meant to be human even after transcending the limitations of humanity. The age of Earth's isolation was over. What came next would depend on how the galaxy chose to respond to the knowledge that humans had guardians in the dark between stars. Some would fear them for it, others would seek to exploit them, but all would remember the day when humanity refused to kneel and the darkness itself came to their aid. In the depths of space, the last of the dark ships prepared to depart. Their mission was complete. The compact had been honored. Earth remained free. And in the vast spaces between galaxies, ancient ruins continued their patient wait for the next species brave enough or foolish enough to seek knowledge that could transform them into something new. The cycle would continue, as it had for millions of years. But for now, Earth stood protected by its children, who had chosen to become something more than human in order to preserve what humanity meant. The galaxy would learn to fear not humanity's strength, but humanity's legacy. And in the dark between stars, that legacy waited patiently for the next time it would be needed.